My most recent sim racing purchase would be Assetto Corsa Competizione for Xbox One. The simulator is known as being one of, if not the best sim for GT3 and GT4 class racing on the market that you can find anywhere. The game is known for its amazing physics, beautiful graphics, and very good online. The game was designed mainly for those playing on PC, meaning that the Xbox or PlayStation variants will have a few drawbacks because of the capabilities of the consoles compared to your average PC. Let's go into that drawbacks and ways you can fix them in today's video. The first, in my opinion, the most obvious thing that does need changing would be the graphics of the game. The first thing that I noticed when I hopped into Assetto Corsa Competizione was that the game looked extremely pixely, especially for a game that's coming out in the modern era of sim racing. Even hopping from Assetto Corsa in 2014 to Assetto Corsa from 2018 ACC, I did notice that there was a massive difference in the way that the game looked on my console and on my TV. These graphics issues do show up very often on places where you have tiny details, for example the edges of curbs, or it is very evident in replays where the car is far away from the camera. It can affect immersion in that you don't get the amount of realism you would because your brain does register that disconnect between real life and the sim world a bit more because you do have these pixelated graphics. Now I will say after maybe a half hour of playing through a session, your eyes will adjust to the graphics and it does not become as big of a problem as it was when you first start jumping into the game. I've also noticed that because of these extremely high graphics, after I run the game for more than say a half an hour, my Xbox does get quite toasty. The fans sound like I'm taking off entering 30,000 feet in a 737. It's something that you will not notice, but once you do go to power off your console or you do place your hand in the area where the fan is, you will notice, yo, my console is very warm. It's not to the levels where it could catch fire or where it could have issues, but it is something that I have noticed and something that would be resolved in the game. Now, a very simple solution to this would be to add a video tab with the ability to reduce the graphics. Now, I am playing sim racing on a 720p TV. When the graphics are set to their highest or to where they are for the console, it does lead to that distortion that I do experience. However, on the Xbox One version, there is no tab to adjust your video settings. Now, simply turning down the graphics to match my 720p TV or turning down the frames per second, I do think that that would lead to a better gaming experience and it would add that amount of realism even when the graphics are being turned down. It is a net turn up once you do calculate all of the different things that will be enhanced because everything is tailored specifically for whatever you are playing on. The next thing on this list is something that me as well as any other content creators will notice more than your average sim racer, and that is the video replay or content capturing features of this game. Now when you want to say capture a replay of a race, you are stuck with the in-game cameras that are available to you. Now while you do have three options, when you would like to get a specific shot of the cars flying by, you do realize that most of the time you can't get that shot because that camera angle isn't available as one of the three options in the game for most of the race tracks. Now there is no way to adjust or move the camera manually, and there is also a lack of a flying drone camera, a free flying drone camera that is, like you can't implement for ACC on the PC, but you cannot do in the Xbox One variant. That means that sometimes when you do want to capture content, you can be left frustrated because you envision a shot in your mind but you can't quite recreate it to the extent that you would like to in the game. Now this game also lacks the feature of full race replays, which means that if you do want to capture a great overtake or a highlight, you have to pause your race and then save the replay instead of going back once you finish the race and saving the replay that way. That does mean that you can lose focus while driving because you do have that moment of unconcentration, that's probably not a word, Anyway, you do have that moment where your brain is switched off from race mode, and then you have to switch it back on quickly, and that can lead to misjudgment in your driving that can lead to either a crash or running wide, and it can affect how your race does end. Now, I do know that it would be very hard to implement full race replays into a console version because of limitations on the console, especially with the Xbox One consoles or the previous generation of consoles in general. The third issue for AC Sim the Xbox One in this video would be the overall functionality of the game. Now, for the most part, this game does work well, but at some points you can really tell that the video game was very much optimized for the PC and not the console. The game will crash at unexpected moments. Sometimes I'll be in the middle of the race and then I'll be scared because the game will make that loud buzzing noise once it has crashed. And that means that you have to exit the race, which that not only means that you lose your progress, but if you're on for a great result, it can be frustrating when that does happen, and it can happen quite often. Another issue that I've had with the functionality of the game is there are way too many frame drops, and I think that a lot of this is due to the very high graphic settings that the game is set to by default. It makes it so that sometimes the console can't run what the game is telling it to run to, and the frames will drop. Now, in sim racing, bigger than any other game series, having a consistent FPS and a consistent video quality, it's one of the most important elements of racing in the simulator, because without that it does affect consistency, because you have to adjust to these changes on the fly, and it can be very, very difficult, especially when you're not expecting them. Another functionality issue that I found with the game is that there will be the occasional glitch. For example, when exiting a replay mode, I will find that sometimes my interior of the car will start glitching or spazzing out. I'm not sure why it does occur. It could be a PC issue as well. This should be looked into by the game developers, because it would take this sim to that upper echelon that is maybe not necessarily expected, but would be greatly appreciated by the sim racers on Xbox One and on ACC as a whole. The final thing that I have noticed for the game is the UI interface of the title itself. Now, while this isn't a console-specific issue, it is something that I figured I might as well mention in this video, as we are going over the negatives of this game. At first, especially for beginners, it can be a bit difficult to navigate, as, at least in my opinion, the menus are a little bit all over the place, and it does take a little while to get used to where you have to go and to figure out how to get to what you like to do in the game. Now, the UI isn't as bad as, say, iRacing or Assetto Corsa for the PC, or at least stock builds of those two games, but I do think that maybe a restructure of it, or maybe a little bit of tweaking, can definitely help. Now, another thing that is kind of a part of UI, or maybe not necessarily the UI, but something that you will find when you jump into the game, is that there are no default mappings for a steering wheel once you do hop into the game. Now, this might not be a problem for people on the PC, but for Assetto Corsa Competizione on the console, a lot of people are going to use this game as their introduction into sim racing, and they might not necessarily know where to map the buttons or what goes where for the optimal sim racing experience. I think that if not reworking the system or adding some defaults, I think that maybe having a guide or a suggested guide to the best button bindings for your specific steering wheel, I think that would help a lot, especially for those beginners playing on console who have not played Sims before and do not know which buttons should go where for the optimal sim racing experience. Now, I do want to say that Assetto Corsa Competizione is still an amazing sim racing title. For every negative that I mentioned in this video, there are 7+ positives that you could say for this game. In my opinion, ACC is the best sim racing title available for console, and I 100% mean that. What is available for the price that it is something that is not touched by any other console sim, at least not at the moment. This video was more so to point out that if these issues were to be fixed or patched, I think that it would put ACC on a level above pretty much any other sim out there across the board, and it would overall, I think, draw a lot more people to the sim, especially on console, where these limitations do become more apparent. Well, that is all for today. Let me know your opinions on Assetto Corsa Competizione in the comments down below. Thanks to everyone who chose to stick around and watch the entire video. This will be me signing off. Stay happy, stay positive, stay safe. Peace out.